talked about your relationship with your daughter, and you said, not sure the term you use. I guess you had to apologize or change because what you learned from your father, you were teaching your daughter, and you realized it was wrong. What was that?
My father, I had no idea at the time that he had a lot of unresolved anger from the way he was raised in the South, had to deal with a lot of racism, and he carried that back to Detroit. And I mean, I remember one time, brother, he asked me, he ran a barber shop. He asked me just simply to cut the air on. I accidentally cut the heat on. I think I may have been 10 years old. He cursed me out in front of everybody in the barber shop. That right there shattered my confidence as a man. It demeaned me, and it didn't stop there. He loved me, but he thought giving me gifts would suffice, and it didn't. I needed him to be active in my life, but he couldn't because of all the pain that he'd been through. And so it's called intergenerational trauma, where you pass down what you've received. So before I knew it, this anger that he even had toward my mother, he said he told my mother one day they had gotten divorced, and she accidentally opened one of his letters with mail that came to the house. And here it is, I'm going to middle school, and my mother shows me her gun in her purse, and she says, your father just called and said he's going to do something to me because I opened his letter. So here it is, as a young boy trying to focus in class, I got to think about my mother's life. But that's how much anger my father had. And brother, you know, I hope my transparency frees some brothers listening or watching. It's like, you know, you don't want to create a legacy of wounds. You want to fight and do whatever you can to get healed, because if not, now you're going to see that same behavior in your children. Then you're mad at them, and all they did was become who you were.
That's why I think
to me, I just want to make this comment real quick. When I hear this, I think a huge part of this is figuring out a way to get over whatever victimhood you're feeling. To me, I think a lot of the victimhood breeds a lot of bitterness, a lot of anger within people, where they're not able to figure out their situations, move forward, move beyond certain situations, because they're still bitter, because people are still feeding you with information saying that, hey, you were wronged here. These people did this to you. I don't know, maybe y'all see it differently, but I think Charlamagne is going to bring something interesting into the conversation right here.
apologizing to your kids is so important because that's something that, you know, I feel like I never got from my father. And I always say my father raised me out of fear and not love. And I think that's what we got to avoid doing. We got to raise our kids out of.
Let me ask y'all this. Do y'all think, what do you think about what he just said? My father raised me out of fear rather than love. What do y'all think about that? See, I think that we have a society, I think that that can be very dangerous. You're probably thinking like, well, which way can be very dangerous? Obviously, both can be very dangerous. But I think that what Charlamagne's discussing as far as not raising kids out of fear and just raising them out of love, I think that you have to be a bit more specific when it comes to what type of love that is, because I see our society right now as having the weakest male leadership that we've ever had and the most confused women that we've ever had. And it's because I think a lot of parents move too far away. Maybe because a lot of our parents were brought up in a fear-based parenting style that they then wanted to raise their kids in a more loving fashion. But I think that the love can get complicated and misconstrued, or not misconstrued, but I think the love may appear as love, but it's really like. I think a lot of parents want to be liked. I think parents would rather be liked than teach their kids lessons for life, because there's certain life lessons. Like when you think about life lessons, these are critical things, right? These are things that if you make the wrong decision, there's going to be certain consequences that come with it. So you should be fearful of these things, in my opinion. Now, obviously there's a large spectrum between fear and love, right? There's a large spectrum that goes well beyond on both sides. But I mean, when I think about the nature shows, can you imagine a gazelle being raised with love or like? And how do you teach the gazelle to pay attention and to have a healthy level of fear with the lion? Do we think that we're just so different? We talked about on the last show how we, in my opinion, especially as we get older, but where we are right now in society, we rely on our lowest, when it comes to war, our lowest animalistic nature. So I don't know how you teach a gazelle of the severity of a lion if you don't use some type of fear training. And when I look at our current culture, my current society, like my generation, we avoid responsibility. We avoid accountability. We want to be liked. We'd rather be liked. We live in a society right now where the men would rather be liked than be effective. Parents would rather be liked than to be effective in raising their kids, to teach them certain skills and values and tools and perspective that they know that they're going to need as they move forward in life. But you avoid teaching those kids those things because, oh, well, they'll just learn them on their own. Or I don't want to teach them those things because I don't want to use fear. I don't want to scare my... There's a lot of people my age, and myself included, that are very fearful of, shoot, will I end up having a family? Will I be able to create a family like that I want with the person that I want, that I was... Because we weren't raised that way. We weren't taught those things. We'll shoot a basketball with our kid, but we won't ever talk to them about how to choose the right person. We'll go over in football with our kid, with our son, how to communicate to their wide receiver that they're going to throw the ball to, but we'll never talk about how to communicate with your significant other. And most of the time we're learning through seeing the adults in our life, and we're seeing them not communicate properly. Because parents want to be liked instead of being respected. Because men, and I blame the men more than anybody, men would rather be liked than to actually be effective in teaching their kids. And then when we look at our current generation, we wonder why we are the way that we are. Why nobody's getting married, why nobody knows how to have a relationship, why divorces are so down, are so high. Let's keep going. You talk about fear, you know what's scary? And ladies, y'all tell me, I would be scared if I was 40 years old with no kids. Run into whatever doctor to try to freeze my eggs and then rely on in vitro fertilization to... You're relying on IVF to have kids because you avoided having kids when you were the most healthy age to have kids, because society and our parents taught us to go out there and have fun and enjoy our life and to not prioritize having families, getting married early. Because maybe they're not... You want to know what ends up happening, in my opinion? Parents, you know why they don't teach us this? Because a lot of times our parents are jealous, especially our mothers. Our mothers envy the lives that a lot of the young women live today. They envy those lives. Oh, my daughter's going on this trip here, this trip there, this trip, traveling with her friends. They envy that. Because the grass is always greener on the other side. And then what happens later on? Now those women that are 40 and 50, because they prioritize something totally different than family early on, now you know who they're envying? The life that their mother had, the life that their grandmother had. And they don't even know how to get that life because they weren't brought up to be their mother or brought up to be their grandmother. They want the men to act like their grandfathers, but they have no idea what their grandmothers were doing. Let me keep going because this is not even what he was talking about, but you're talking about parenting. So I'm sorry I took the conversation there, but it is what it is. Let's keep going.
Love and not fear.
Yes,
the fear of
absolutely.
that they might end up, falling victim to the street, or end up, if we were in the street doing the same things that we were doing, like we got to relinquish that.
That's true. I call it fear-based parenting. My mother was that way, which is understandably, I understand why she was, because she just lost a son.
Uncle brother, I get this a lot. Intergenerational trauma is real. You don't seem to understand how lucky you were to have the upbringing you had. You're in the minority, and for many of us, just getting over it takes work. No, Uncle brother, it's not that I don't understand how lucky I am. The problem is that I don't understand why everybody else doesn't understand how lucky I am and strive for that same type of upbringing in their life. I'm over here wondering why people that didn't have my upbringing, why y'all not pissed off at y'all parents and applying pressure on them and holding them accountable and wondering like, yo, why the hell didn't you raise me this way? You think just because I grew up with parents that, as much of the cheat code as I had with just growing up with parents, because I'm black and we have such a low bar where it's like, oh my God, you had two parents in your household? Compared to all the other, let's say the white friends that I had, to where that was just the norm. Black people get extra credit for just having two parents in the household. What I don't understand and where I'm not connected with, why aren't people pissed off? Why aren't you saying, Mom, Dad, having these conversations with them? But instead, you want to post your dad and act like you post your damn dad on Instagram and you know who I'm talking to. You want to post your dad on Instagram like he the father of the year, but then never be courageous enough to have a real conversation with him and say, Dad, I needed you to be my father instead of my friend. That's what I don't understand. I know exactly how lucky I am. What I dislike is the fact that a black person with two parents in the household is considered lucky. Do you know how low of a bar that is? We're over here complaining about DEI, caring about what's going on in Gaza, Uncle brother. And it's lucky just to have two parents in the household. Uncle brother, you don't know if my parents had a great relationship. You don't know if they communicated great. You don't know any of those things, but you're telling me that I don't know how lucky I am just to have two parents in the household. Do you understand that that's the problem? And the only way to fix it, you can sit here and say it's difficult. You could say all these things. The only way to fix it is to change and have uncomfortable conversations and call out certain things in your family and your friends and whoever else and stop continuing this cycle because it's only getting worse. I know exactly how lucky I am. Exactly how lucky I am. What y'all don't seem to understand, and I'm just talking about people with your perspective, what you don't seem to understand or what I don't understand is why y'all not pissed off standing on this. Why y'all not pissed off calling out men the way that I call out men? Because I call out male leadership saying how terrible it is. When I talk to my friend group, I'm the only one calling this stuff out. Why is the person that grew up with both parents calling this stuff out where everybody else just falls back and give their parents a pass? Yo, I'm going to tell you why. Do you think that my grandparents, hold up. Do you think that my grandparents, like when I think about them, do you think that my grandparents, they just had the most amazing marriage and everything was just good? No, but they had a purpose because they didn't grow up in this spoiled, entitled world that we grow up in, where we got a world of opportunities to do anything that we want in this world, but instead we sit on here and complain. We sit back and complain and blame white people for the problems that we have when we live in America. We can accomplish anything. You can open up a business tomorrow and start selling your product online. What is your excuse?
What is our excuse? The only thing we suffer from is terrible male leadership, punk-ish male leadership. Because we got punk fathers who want to be friends to their daughters and friends to their sons instead of teaching them the values that they're going to need in this life. That's what we got. And then we're just going to sit back and fall back on intergenerational trauma. Okay, cool. That's a valid excuse. But how are we going to change it? Intergenerational trauma is a real thing. It's a real thing. Oh, yeah, it's a real thing. So how are we going to fix it? Let's keep going.
You know, and then my other brother from my father, he was murdered. So she was terrified that I would die the same way. And because of that fear, she had checked out, you know, meaning the affirmation that you typically get from your mother, the nurturing, I didn't get that.
And you know why I'm calling BS and I got this energy? Because people want to complain about stuff and say, oh, you just don't get it. You don't understand how lucky you are. Why don't y'all listen? Why don't y'all listen? Because I'm telling you the experience that I had. Why don't y'all listen? But when I talk to people, it's always coming from a standpoint of, oh, well, it's different. It's different. Oh, okay, it's different. So who are you going to listen to? You going to listen to somebody else that is still dealing with that intergenerational trauma? And intergenerational trauma comes in a lot of different ways, Uncle Brother. Just because I grew up with two parents in the household, you think that my dad and my grandparents didn't pass down intergenerational trauma to me? I just choose to change it. I choose to hold myself accountable and responsible instead of leaning on the victimhood mindset of, oh, well, this was done to me. No, I don't care what my dad did. I don't care what my mom did. I'm my own person. I'm a grown ass man, and everything that I do moving forward is on me, period. That's the energy that I move with every day when I wake up. All this blame game shit. I don't care about this intergenerational trauma. Change that shit.
My mother loved me. Like everyone who knew my mother knew she loved me. But I realized in therapy one session when the therapist asked me, who would get the Band-Aid when you got hurt? And I said, I would. My mother would just tell me where it was. And in that moment, I realized, man, this is why I'm misusing women, because I never understood the importance of having my mother, the understanding of what nurturing is, the value, the affirmation. And I unpacked the mother wound as well in that book, because many of us, what we're seeking is the love from our mothers and women, and they'll never be able to match what we didn't get.
Yeah.
And it's unfair to them. And so I had to unpack all of that, brother, because I didn't want to transfer that onto my children. And so I've allowed myself to be more tender in that area. My son by far has the best father, because I've become the embodiment of what I teach. And so to your point, yeah, it's absolutely important for us as parents to not be fear-based, especially my son's he's driving now. Why do I have to teach him how to get pulled over by the police? Why am I focused on that? What is that teaching him? Is that really making it better, or is it making it worse when he gets pulled over? But those are the things, you know, we have to teach in our community. But at the end of the day,
Yo, miss me with all this. Miss me with that. You know why you got to teach it in our community? Is because look what we do to each other in our communities. Look what we do to each other in our communities. What is our culture? That's why we got to teach it. Because we're always making excuses for our community instead of demanding that we change our habits. You know who didn't make excuses? The Nation of Islam didn't make excuses. Y'all changing y'all lives. You're not harming another black person. We're not having that in our neighborhood. We policed our own neighborhoods, right? Sit back and act like, oh, well, why I got to teach my kid, you know, how to deal with the police when white kids don't got to teach my kids. Well, look at how black neighborhoods, give me a black neighborhood. Give me a black city. And you tell me what's the culture, what's the energy in that city. Uncle Brother, you were talking about it before, how you drive through Baltimore. You tell me, what's Baltimore like?
making sure you balance that with some positive reinforcement and to teach them that how to live in the moment. Because when we teach our children, we got to understand we're also teaching them how to miss the moment, because they're programming themselves like, okay, if this happened, this probably gonna happen because that happened to dad, that happened to mom, it's probably gonna happen to me. And so in that moment, if they're not open to be able to meet the moment, to do what's necessary, they may fail in that moment.
Okay, so this is I just can't, like, I'm telling y'all, man, something just triggers me about all this soft talk, man. And I say soft talk because and I don't mean soft as far as him and anything he's saying. I mean soft talk like, yo, I don't understand it. I'm a direct person. Like, we understand the problems. What are the solutions? What are the solutions? Uncle, brother, big bro, big homie. You got more knowledge than probably anybody a part of this chat, me, whatever. What are the solutions? You can clearly identify the problems, but what are the solutions? The practical solutions. Please tell me. Who has time to be waiting around? Time is precious. Time is limited. What are the solutions? Okay, the reasons for the problems, we could validate those. We could say, yeah, it was messed up. You had this. What is the solution? Let's move on to the next one. I want y'all to see this other video. So there was 2 videos that this gentleman had. Let's take a look at the other one.